Hello, I'm Gaby Mendes.
And I'm Felix Kabutey Jr. You are now listening to the Talk Twenties podcast.
This podcast is your ultimate guide to adult life, where we discuss, with the help of our amazing guests, all the things that we were never taught in school.
Adult life can be really isolating as everyone's got their own thing going on. But remember, you're never alone. There are over 7 million of us 20-somethings all trying to figure it out. Let's unpack a new topic in today's episode. Hello, my people, and welcome back to another episode of the Talk Twenties podcast. Please make sure you subscribe and follow us so you don't miss a single episode of us in the studio.
Today, we're joined in the studio by Ola Majekodunmi. I'm so excited to have her in the studio today. She is the founder of All Things Money, where she talks all about everything to do with finance in your 20s and beyond. And we're so excited to have her today because she's literally everything that we're about in Talk 20s. So hi, Ola.
Hello,
Thank you for coming up to Liverpool. So excited to have you here. You made the trip up from London.
Yep.
Come up for the day. Enjoying Liverpool so far?
I am. I enjoyed the Leaf. So, yeah. Well
shout out to Leaf on Bold Street.
Yeah. And now I'm ready to talk to you guys. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Amazing.
Oh, no, it's amazing. And I think we've followed each other for quite a long time, haven't we? We've also been to the same uni, but at different times, which is actually also really cool. Nice little shared experience there. But tell us a little bit more about you and All Things Money and where that all came from. Because it's actually been not even that long since you've begun this, but it's really taken the world by storm.
Thank you. So I'm Ola, founder of All Things Money. And I am 25 years old now, went to University of Birmingham, studied business management, graduated in a fun time called the pandemic. Don't know if anyone else has heard of that time, but I don't think I'll ever forget it. I was in my final year of university then. So obviously, sadly, graduation, everything was kind of cancelled. And I actually originally had plans to move to Australia, one-way ticket booked, sadly couldn't go ahead. And just to kind of pass the time away during lockdown, I started All Things Money as a little platform to teach people how to manage their finances effectively. I'm sure we can all agree that we're not taught anything when it comes to managing money, credit cards, mortgages, investing, everything else in between. So I thought, you know what, why not do it myself? And now 2 and a bit years later, it's my full-time job. And online community of just over 18,000 now. So we're growing.
Amazing things. I mean, we literally can resonate so much, especially me and you, both 24, 25, both business management graduates, both graduated in the pandemic. We were literally saying how much of a crazy time that was. But it was also a time of redirection. And I feel like one thing I always say is the pandemic gave us the gift of time. What actually drew you to starting All Things Money?
So that's a good question. So I think for me, all of my friends, if shout out to them if they're watching, to be fair, all of my friends always coined me the cheap friend. When I don't think I'm cheap, I'm probably I'm frugal. I sound frugal. Yes. I'm that gal. I've always kind of been good with my money. And then in the lockdown, I kind of learned how to invest in the stock market. Always knew what investing was, but I never really had the spare cash. So I thought now's the best time to kind of learn and start doing it. So that same week, I got a good 3 or 4 of my friends investing as well. And I was okay, if me and my friends can invest, if I can get them investing in the stock market, why can't I teach other young 20-somethings how to do the same as well? And I think that's where the idea of All Things Money came. It started off as a page just to share budgeting, saving and investing tips. And now we literally cover everything under the sun when it comes to personal finance.
I think it's amazing what you've built so far. Honestly, I think one of the best things that you can do in your 20s, I believe, and we strongly believe at Talk 20s, is really understanding your finances and really learning about that. For you, I'm really interested to know your answer to this actually. Why do you think we're not taught any of this stuff at school, and why do you think it matters so much?
That's a good question. I think resource-wise, I don't think teachers have the capacity to be able to teach people, students how to manage their finances effectively. That's one side. But I also have a conspiracy theory. So I believe that for capitalism to work, I don't think everyone can be rich. So I think there's a little well-kept secret that, we just keep the rich rich and the poor poor. So I think that's maybe another reason why it's not really hammered down. I know it's in the curriculum now, but there's no pressure for teachers to have to teach it or to cover it in schools. But I think it's really important that we are taught how to manage our finances because, there's been so many horror stories where you hear people end up in debt. They don't realise the dangers of maybe taking out certain types of loans and things like that, or even just learning how to manage their finances with their first time job. People don't know how to manage that. And without that education, it can be quite worrying to see where that can maybe lead people. So hopefully with All Things Money and what I'm teaching can kind of help people feel more empowered about their finances. I think especially more now than ever, people feel comfortable and secure in their finances. I think that's really important.
Yeah, don't get me started about conspiracy theories, right? But I have to agree with you, right? So I saw a TikTok once and it was this lady speaking about how she's worked so hard to send her daughter to private school.
I've seen this.
You know the one?
I've
You know the one.
Yeah,
and she dropped a little bit of the tea.
Yes.
So even at a young age, in those kind of like private schools or grammar schools, there's actually lessons on investing, saving, all these different things that aren't typically taught in kind of like state schools.
Yeah, she said her daughter in year 1 had been told to bring in just a pound to school.
I did see it.
You would have seen it. You would have seen
she was
it.
like, we want to make it grow. And the mum was like, what do you mean make it grow? She's like, no, we're going to learn how to make the pound grow. And I was just like,
more things, Whereas I never had that lesson.
Yeah,
That was missed off my education.
Yeah, definitely didn't get that
whereas
myself.
we're having literacy lessons, they're having financial literacy lessons, which is the difference.
It's so different.
Yeah. So I do think it is very much like you have to be in a certain social class or a certain circle to kind of know what it is. Like investing, like, you know, that's not really covered. I think it's only now because we have the internet at our hands that we are open to knowing what investing is. But really in like my school and university, we weren't talking about investing in the stock market. Like that's a whole nother like ballpark. And that like when it comes to like finances in a whole nother realm, really.
And also the thing that I think about school and why we're not taught like practical life skills is because that there's so much pressure on teachers and the education system to on academic outcomes. So it's basically like your school is measured on its success of how well you do academically. It's not about how well you do. No one knows your finances when you leave uni. It's about what job you kind of maybe get into, or maybe it's how many universities what universities you go to. But I definitely think actually looking at the perspective of like why then would private schools benefit, like given that financial literacy? And I actually think it's because they probably know that they'll get into good jobs anyway through connections of connections. So there's less pressure on the got to get the academic skills in, and it's more like, no, actually let's teach you how you're going to get a good job anyway. So let's just teach you how to manage that money even better.
I just think just the caliber of student teacher that they might have, they might already have the disposable income to be investing on the side as well, so they can just pass off the knowledge of second hand. It might not have to be. I think to be able to teach something, you need to know what you're talking about, don't you? And I think maybe in that setting, they probably are more well equipped with talking about their personal finances a bit more than maybe your average state school teacher. I'm not an expert.
Interesting. Anyone who has ever been to a private school or can talk about this, like definitely DM us about this. This is actually such an interesting conversation that we've dived into in like the first 10 minutes. But like, tell us like your perspective. I'd love to hear from our listeners, like what their actual experiences were of like being taught about money in school and whether that differed for them, whether they went to private or like public school as well.
You know what I'd love to see, Gaby? Someone that went to a state school sat here and someone who went to a private school sat there. And just an open conversation.
I went to like private school till the age of 7.
Yeah.
Did you do the pound thing?
No. I'm not going to shout out the school, but I wish I grew my pound because I didn't get that.
So you're learning how to grow your pound now.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. And teaching other people as well on the way. So talking about money at the time, and obviously money is a big conversation at the moment when you look at what's happening in not even just the economy in the UK, but the global economy as well. But with a focus on the UK where we all are and the cost of living, have you got any cost of living tips for people, especially in their 20s? Because it's hard enough trying to navigate this decade of your life when you're trying to take that step into becoming an adult and, you know, watch your own purse, your own wallet. But now a cost of living, recession, economy's coming down. What's your advice for the people?
Yeah, so it's tough because I feel like everywhere we look now, we're constantly being reminded of this cost of living crisis. And it is tough. Like, you know, I don't know how bad things are going to get, but I think obviously things are going to get worse to get better. But I think for those that are maybe listening and are stressed about their finances now, I think it all comes down to number one, starting off with a budget. Now, people who are listening or watching are probably going to be rolling their eyes like, oh God, here we go with the budget. But I think a budget is really important. And if you don't know what a budget is, it's that financial plan to see where you're at financially. Because I guess loads of people are scared about the cost of living crisis, but don't actually know where they stand financially. And they don't actually know if this cost of living crisis is going to have as big an impact as what they think or what the news is telling them they're going to have. So having a good financial plan of how much you getting in your income, how much are your expenses, and having a good look at where you're at. So, you know, if you might see like, your groceries from Sainsbury's has gone up, then at least you know how much buy, and then how much you maybe need to either increase your income by to accommodate that rising cost, or maybe reduce your expenses to match that. So I guess a budget, number one, is really important, just to have that plan. And then I think secondly, having savings, I think it's really important to have whatever you can afford to save right now. I think a lot of people like to throw out numbers and, you need to have 3 to 6 months of your expenses saved up. But I think right now in this cost of living crisis, anything you can to afford to save, I think it's really important. I'm honestly, I literally preach that to the gospel all the time, in the fact that it's really important that whatever you can afford to save right now, try to, because again, you never know how much you might need down the line. So I think at university, my car broke down like 3 times. I had to get like 3 brand new car batteries. Wow. And at the time it was like £100 per pop. And, someone might say, oh, I've only got £50 in savings, but that actually might just help you out if you, need to get an emergency train ticket home, or vice versa with anything else. Having just something is really, really handy right now.
Yeah. I think on the budgeting tip as well, I can testify to this. I used to be so scared of sitting down, looking at how much I earned and how much I was spending, because I knew I was spending a lot more than I was earning. But it doesn't always have to be that complex. You just need to see how much is coming in, how much is going out, and how much you're left over with. And over time, like, I've got a whole Excel spreadsheet now where
I like that.
I literally monitor my finances, and I actually enjoy going into like, how much did I spend today, and how much, what I'm saying, it gives me a really good outlook. But you can really just start simple in how much is coming in, how much is going out, and what am I left with. And when you see what you're left with, that's when you can put aside how much you want to save,
exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
And I don't think anyone listening are alone in the fact that, for example, we interviewed a lot of people. We went out there in the, we do like street style interviews for Talk 20s and stuff like that. And we went out and we interviewed people in the street, and we asked people, like, in terms of Christmas and stuff like that, whether they were thinking any differently about Christmas and like, all their presents and the cost of Christmas. And a lot of people said, haven't really thought about it. Like, I don't really know if the cost of living is really hitting me yet. And I think for a lot of people, like, that might be the case for you right now. And it feels a little bit like everyone's like, oh, I'm just trying to, like, keep swimming, just keep swimming or whatever, like Dory sings or whatever. But I do think a lot of people are like, just trying to get by and just going out. I'm just going to pretend that like nothing's going to happen, but it probably will hit, and it probably will take, everyone knows when you go into the supermarket now that that bill you're going, I paid this and I got this. Like, it is starting to all creep up on us. So I think now, if you haven't had that sit down, look at your finances, is the best time. Like, the 100%. More that you put it off, everyone is kind of doing that, but it's just, you're going to be one of the ones to help yourself if you do have that sit down.
And I think doing it monthly, like doing it as regularly as possible. Again, like Felix said, sometimes it can be scary. Like, I had a fun summer, let's put it that way. So it literally took me till September to, look over everything again. I did have to make some adjustments. I removed all my credit cards off my Apple Pay, because sometimes there was times I was like, maybe just tapping a bit too much. So making, I think, and I think adding some friction sometimes to your spending can be quite helpful, because I think now spending is so frictionless. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I've got like ASOS I used to have ASOS on my phone. I used to have like Apple Pay. I have all my like cards saved on my phone and my laptop, and spending can become so effortless. And I think more now than ever, we need to be really, really cautious of our spending, and still treat yourself. But I think sometimes now the frictionness of spending makes you spend way more than you ever wanted to or needed to, and especially now with buy now, pay later. It's very easy just to buy things, and then your delivery comes like, did I really need all this? So I think things like that, just reevaluating your finances to see where you are, what can you and what can't you afford, is really important.
Totally. Definitely. And it's also, I think, a good tip for saving as well. Also, what you can and can't afford. How much can you afford to save? Just because Todd is saving. I couldn't even think of a name. Is it Joe Blogg? Joe Blogs. That's the one. Everyone knows Joe Blogs, right? Everyone knows Joe Blogs.
Everyone knows Todd.
Shout out Todd wherever he is. But just because Todd is saving X amount doesn't mean that you have to save the same.
Yeah, exactly
it's
that.
All,
it's all relative to what you can afford right now.
Of course. And one thing that always helped me as well is I used to get told, save for a rainy day.
Yes.
No one knows what everyone else's rainy day looks like, right? But then I switched that for myself, and I said, save to make a play. Okay, and that really just helped me. That really just helped. Yeah. Because then it was, for me, it was like, okay, I'm saving with a purpose. It's not just when times are bad, when times are bad.
And also, when is a rainy day? That's another thing, is because I don't think, like, I've definitely saved for a rainy day before, but then even when it gets to that rainy day, I'm like, oh, like, is this bad enough for me to take like money out my finances? Is this just me being financially irresponsible to land myself in this situation? Is this worthy of my rainy day fund? But I like the save to make a play, because it could be like getting yourself out of a sticky situation. It could be going on holiday. It could be it could be taking that next career step. It could be taking that plunge, quitting your job to do something else. Like save to make a play.
100%.
We're gonna actually trademark that.
Let's do it. We need to do that quick. We need to before this episode comes out. But that, for me, that took away the negative connotation sometimes I had about saving.
And I'm so glad you said that, because I think I host regular workshops, and a lot of people are now like, can I dip into my savings? I'm like, well, you know, that's what your savings are for. And I think rather than punishing yourself and thinking you're a failure because you're having to dip into your savings, I think it's, you know, you see it as a buffer that maybe 1 month. I'm not saying this because you've overshopped on ASOS, but if you find yourself that maybe your grocery shoppings are a bit too high and you're struggling, now's the time to, you know, if you need to dip into it, absolutely fine. But yeah, I know there's some people that dip into savings for the sake of it. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about people that actually need to. There's no harm in having to dip in and out of it if you have to.
If you feel attached right now, that's a good thing.
I mean, I'm coming for
you. So funny. Well, when we were going for lunch earlier, we chatted a lot about our university experiences, and some of which we cannot share on the microphones, guys. Very, like, you know, we were talking about initiations. Like, if anyone has got any initiation stories, we'd love to hear them, because we got some. Wow, Ola was providing.
I was providing the goods.
So, but talking about university lifestyle, then it's very hard to go from graduate to fully fledged adult. Like, not gonna lie, a lot of people expect you just to be fine. Like, you know, you're just stepping out into the big wide world. Georgia here, she's literally just graduated. She's going through that whole process at the moment. In terms of like someone who has just graduated or is in the first couple of years after graduating, what would you like to tell them about their finances? Because I know there's so many things I'd want to say to younger me who graduated, because
100%.
it's a tough time in there.
Yeah, it is. I think, that's a hard one. So I think when it comes to, you know, when you've got your first job, I think firstly, understanding how much is coming in and how much is leaving. So I think a lot of people might be shocked that they may have got their first ever job and then maybe having a salary of 30 grand. They realise 30 grand divided by 12 months isn't what's coming into their bank account. So actually understanding the deductions that actually have to be made. So if you're paying your student loan, for example, your tax, your national insurance, make sure you actually have an understanding of how much is leaving your account in that respect. And also making sure you're paying the right amount of tax. Because I know loads of people get emergency tax and then they realise they're overpaying and stuff like that. So making sure you actually understand what's coming in. And I guess it goes back to, again, when you have your job, working out what you can and can't afford in terms of your expenses. I know a lot of people, when they get their first job, they're like, I don't know, getting cars on finance and they're doing X, Y, Z. I think sometimes you can get really easily carried away by that, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but I think just understanding that you might not necessarily have to do that. You might not be able to afford that. And also, building that savings. And again, finding ways that you can multiply your income as well. So I'm an advocate for investing in the stock market, learning how to invest, multiply your wealth if you can as well, and hopefully try and beat inflation at the moment, because it's eating us all up.
It totally is. And I think the thing that I'd want to say to like younger me is that, like, it will take time to get on your feet. Like when you graduate, like, or everything that you've just said, like that's definitely the route that you want to be going down. But it can also feel like quite overwhelming when you first graduate, because I know I graduated and I was in my overdraft, and then it takes you a good few months to kind of get yourself into a situation where you can start doing, I'm going to do the saving, I'm going to do the investing, I'm going to do all these other things. And not going to lie, in the North, there is no starting salary of 30. It just doesn't exist in the North. But it's definitely like London is completely no. But and I think it's one of those things that, like, to completely be okay with the fact that you're probably not going to be doing all singing, all dancing straight away. But if you have the intention of doing that, like you're just saying, then you're on the right track. It's like really important. What would you say?
No, I completely agree. I really like the point you mentioned about, you know, to improve your finance, you need to understand your finances. And that's a step that I personally remember taking when I came out of uni. One of the things I did, like, well, I regret it at the now, but my overdraft. They got me on the fact that they were essentially, to me, giving me free money. Because I had little knowledge of it. And they got me on the real card as well. Those two things, I was like, sign me up. But I literally, you know, I can fess up to it now, but I spent my overdraft almost instantly.
I think like you saying that and owning it, I think what people I think a lot of us are guilty of finishing uni and thinking we're going to have all our stuff figured out. The minute you step out of uni, it just does not happen. Like, I think what we do as well is we compare ourselves to everyone else's situation. So I know some people that are now on the property ladder 2 years out of uni. Amazing. Am I close to that? No. And it's fine. I think a lot of us now, because we're in this whole social media world, we see people on LinkedIn, you see people on Instagram, and they're earning X amount. That's great. But if that's not your situation, also okay. Like, I think a lot of us put such unnecessary pressure. And I know we'll talk on credit scores in a minute, but people come out and they think their credit score needs to be like 999 out of 999. It's like, chill. You just finished uni, and the transition from uni to your first job is a big enough jump, let alone then having your finances A1. And I have run a personal finance platform, and I still have money dates for myself every month, because there's some months where I might have overspent. And again, we're only human. I think once you realise that we're allowed to make mistakes, hopefully not costly ones when it comes to like loans that are like 40% and things like that, but we can make a mistake, so we can always go back and correct them as well.
So yes, Gaby, as you know, this is the part of the podcast where we talk a little bit more about our headline sponsor, Zopa Banks.
It feels a little bit uncertain right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does.
But I think one of the things that we wanted to talk about in this ad section was, even though everything seems uncertain, that we should all still be thinking about our future and saving. Like, I'm a big advocate for saving even in tricky times, because future you will always thank you for that.
Yeah, 100%. I always say, do the things your future you will thank you for. And I think saving definitely falls under that.
And even though everything seems uncertain right now, it's best to be prepared for it. So whether you're a freelancer, you're starting your own thing, or you're in like a normal 9-to-5 job, it's important to get some savings behind you, because they act as like an element of security, you know? So building up a pot of money is super important to lean on in those times of difficulty.
Yeah, 100%.
You know my amazing friend Laura Moore, she's a money and mindset coach.
Oh yeah, I know Laura.
Laura told me about this Zopa Smart Saver account, where basically you can have lots of different saving goals within one account. You only need like £1 to start, and I think you can save up to like £85,000, which would be nice. So it's an account where essentially you can put all your savings in one place, but you can split it into different pots, which is what I love the most about it.
That sounds so interesting, but I'm just wondering, how does that work? Because whenever I've created a savings account, you know how it gets. It might be a rainy day. How do I then access that money, especially when I am saving for a rainy day?
But the best thing about Zopa is that you can have boosted pots. For example, you said you're saving for a rainy day. I always want to make sure I've got a little bit of money just in case my car breaks down. So for an emergency fund, you would want a pot you can access straight away, but you still want to earn a good interest rate on that, which you can do through the Zopa app. But say, for example, saving for a holiday, you don't have to open a different account for that. You can still have it in the same account, but put it into a different pot. And the best thing about it is you can boost those pots so that you can earn a higher interest rate on that pot. You have to then give a notice period. And these can range from 7 days to 95 days. And the higher that you go, the more interest that you get. For example, I might be saving for a holiday. I might choose a higher interest rate and boost that pot, but then I would have to give my 7 days notice or 31 days notice prior to wanting to have access to that money. It's really good because it allows you to be flexible with your savings and have different pots for different goals.
I see. This definitely sounds like the vibe. What did you say it's called? The Zopa Smart what?
Yeah, the Smart Saver on the Zopa app. I think you can just download it from the App Store.
Zopa Smart Saver. I've got it here on the App Store.
We definitely need to tell you that all boosted pots are subject to a notice period, the longest of which is 95 days for the highest interest rate. And you need to save a minimum of £1, and the interest is paid monthly and is subject to variation.
What was that? A money date?
Money date. So my friend Laura, has, I've never called it a money date, but she calls it a money date. And now every month, and I've always done it every month, but I've just now called it a money date. So it's a little bit sexier, you know, rather than just be like looking at my finances. Like, no, it's my money date. And obviously now running a business, I have to do my business's finances and I do my own finances just to make sure I'm on track, making sure I'm contributing to what I need to contribute. And if I haven't, then correct it there and then. So yeah, money dates, monthly money dates. If you're not having a money date, then you're missing out.
I definitely do something similar where I sit down at the start of every month and review my finances. I don't call it something as sexy as money dates, but money date. I might have to rename it. But
I've got no one else taking me out on a date, so it's my own money date right now. So.
But yeah, definitely having that sit down and taking the time to understand your finances is one of the best things you can do, you know, definitely. And that's from that point, that's when you can start to improve. You know, I fessed up to clearing out my overdraft in next to no time. But as soon as I graduated and things didn't go quite as planned, you know, I thought when I get my big graduate job. I'll just pay it off with my first salary. That wasn't the reality.
No.
You know? But slowly but surely, I started paying it off.
Yeah.
Slowly, little by little. And I did clear it. And it's been one of the biggest kind of weights off my shoulder.
Yeah.
Clearing up that overdraft. Would you say the same, Gaby?
Yeah, definitely. It took me a little while. Like, I think also like I moved also up to the Northwest, like after I graduated as well. And obviously the move that, like anyone knows, moving from a new city, like, you know, pound signs, furniture, all of that kind of stuff. So it was a lot as well. And like getting that initial payment, I think it took me a couple before I was actually like, you know, what was coming in, I was only just getting me out the overdraft for like a day. And then it was like, oh no, all of these things coming out. So like, but when you do clear it, and then you start going, okay, like, no, like I have to not be doing this anymore. And like, you don't want to be you want to try and be avoiding like overdraft fees and all of that kind of stuff. You do need to borrow money. There are more sensible ways of doing it.
The bank I was banking with anyway, like, I didn't really understand all the terms and they were terrifying me with these terms. Interest. Inflation. They used to have a branch on my campus and I wouldn't walk that way because I felt like they'd see me and say, there he is. He's wiped out his overdraft. Get him, you know? Get him. So I didn't even walk there. I didn't even walk there. But then I honestly did. I honestly did. But then it's that lack of knowledge.
No, it is that. And hopefully what I cover in terms of, you know, because obviously when you're a student, you have an interest-free overdraft. And when you're a graduate, you have an interest-free overdraft for a certain amount of time. But people don't understand that. People aren't taught that as well. So again, you can fall into a pit where you're like, oh my God, like people are coming for me. Like I'm going to get bailiffs coming around. Like you see so many horror stories. You're like, oh my God, like I'm going to like be in the like pits of it, you know? And I think people hopefully will gain the understanding that they need to when it comes to finances. And when you're in like some debt, there's ways about it and there's ways you can kind of get out of it as well.
Yeah. I think two key terms that we're hearing at the moment is interest and inflation. Can you give us a quick kind of explanation as to what they actually are?
Yeah, so inflation, fun little thing, is when obviously the cost of goods, services increases over time. And historically, you kind of, as an economy, you want your inflation to be at somewhat, let's say 0 to 0.1%, 1%, because your major economy is growing. But obviously, out we're seeing at the moment, inflation is like skyrocket levels, which is obviously why we're seeing the cost of like food, services, petrol going up, and it's just madness. It is just mad. So that has obviously caused a lot of people to, you know, struggle with keeping up with payments, things like that. And it's just an overwhelming time. And I think this is where the cost of living crisis has come now, and the fact that, you know, some people might not feel it, but a lot of people are also feeling the pinch of, God, things are getting expensive. Like I went to Primark the other day and they were giving me Zara prices. I was like, what is going on? Like it is a lot. And I think a lot of us now are kind of joking about it. Like, oh yeah, like haha, like, you know, like, I don't know, broccoli's now I don't think it's £1, but let's just say it's £1 when before it used to be 60p. But, you know, this is like what we're experiencing at the moment. Living is becoming so expensive. I won't even go down the route of house prices and renting and stuff, but things are becoming a lot more expensive, and that's where inflation comes into it.
I think it's really tricky because there's a lot of people who go, you know, inflation, investing, interest rates, like all of these different things, they're big words, right? But I think one of the simplest things is to understand is the difference between saving and investing. And it does kind of come into the inflation conversation, because what we put away in our savings, if we haven't got good interest that we're earning on them, you know, you might want to consider investing if you don't need that money for some time. You're the money expert though, so don't let me explain that section. So in terms of the difference between saving and investing, what's the lowdown? What do people need to know?
So when it comes to saving, obviously you're saving your money in a savings account and you'll be awarded a set amount of interest. Now, there's obviously no element of risk when it comes to saving in the savings account, because obviously you're promising the bank that you're going to leave your money there, and the bank will give you money back because obviously they know they can do whatever they want with that money, essentially behind the scenes. So at the moment, interest rates have been increased again by the Bank of England to try and slow the rate of inflation down. So I think at the moment now you're seeing interest rates on our savings around 2.55, 2.7%, roughly around that, depending on who you're banking with. If it's lower than that, you guys need to switch savings accounts, because I'm seeing people with 0 point something.
No,
we don't want that.
Not the one.
So that's what you got with savings. And on the other hand, you got investing, and investing is when you invest in an asset or a fund, an ETF, with the expectation of your money being rewarded back to you with a set amount of interest. in layman's terms. Obviously, when it comes to investing, there's an element of risk involved because obviously you're investing in the hope that your investments will increase in value. Now, obviously, we know the inflation rate is around 10 to 11% at the moment. So what we're seeing really in real terms, if your savings are only going up by 2.55% and inflation's at, let's say 11%, then the value of your money is depreciating because what you've got in your savings account won't cover what it may have done 5 years ago, for example, because of how expensive living is. Now, a lot of people are asking me, is now the time to invest? X, Y, Z. Sadly, I can't advise that. But if you do have some spare disposable income, you might want to look at investing. And the only reason why I say that is because historically the stock market return is around 10% before inflation's involved. So when you're comparing 2.55% and the possible 10% on your return, it's a no-brainer. However, again, I always recommend if you are maybe someone that needs that money in the next 5 years, I probably wouldn't touch an investing account because obviously cost of living crisis, possible recession, you want to know you've got money you can fall back on. But with investing, if you know you can maybe leave your money untouched for 10 to 15 years, say for example, then you might want to do that as well. So if you can maybe have a healthy balance of doing the both, brilliant. If you can't, stay away from investing. But again, if you want to learn about it, I definitely would recommend checking it out.
Yeah. I mean, the whole world of investing is very interesting.
It is.
But you do have to do your own reading up and 100%. Don't just, listen to
Tom, Dick and Harry telling you about 10x in your money because that's when you're going in the danger zone. But there's loads of ways you can kind of invest responsibly. I share lots of tips online about it. And I'm an advocate for investing personally. But again, you need to have disposable income to do it and don't be investing your life savings. I know so many people have done that with crypto, for example. We won't talk about it, but things like that. It's just very unnecessary and there's ways you can invest safely.
Yeah, that's literally what I was thinking about. I've heard so many horror stories, but there are people like yourself who are literally sharing great knowledge. But when people hear that knowledge, they can go away and read up on it about themselves, which is the most important thing. And when they do that reading, hopefully they become a lot more familiar with these terms, investing, saving, interest. One that used to always get me is credit score.
Oh, here we go.
What is a credit score and why is it important?
Okay, so a credit score essentially ranks your creditworthiness. So it shows the bank how reliable you are to pay back credit, for example. So there's 3 main credit referencing agencies in the UK. You've got TransUnion, Equifax and...
Experian,
that's the one. Help me out, Felix, thanks. And all 3 of them produce you a credit score. So if you don't already know, you have 3 different credit scores. Now, you want to have a good credit score because it shows lenders and banks that you are responsible and they can trust you with a set amount of money that you want to borrow. Now, I think what's really interesting is that when people leave uni, a lot of people ask me, how can I improve my credit score? How can I improve my credit score? And yes, you want a great credit score. That's amazing. But your credit score fluctuates every month. So unless you're really going to buy a house in the next 3 to 6 months, it's not something you really need to be panicking about. And I don't know why, but that's definitely a question I get asked about a lot when it comes to all things money and how they can level up on their finances. It's always about their credit score. But I think when you finish uni, your credit score is probably going to be a lot higher than you actually think it is. And the main reason why is because your student loan, if you do take one out, doesn't affect your credit score. And I think a lot of people think it does. So I think that's why people come out panicking like, oh my God, like my credit score's like 500 out of 999. That's not awful. And there's definitely ways you can kind of improve it. But I think a lot of people really stress about your credit score when I don't think they really need to, unless they're buying a house or a property.
I think I was one of those people, to be honest.
Loads of people are,
I was a little bit worried, but I didn't realize even like paying my phone bill was contributing to my credit score, little things like that.
Or any credit card you have, as long as you're paying off it in full each month, and that's boosting that credit score. So you're going to be in a good position to do that. And obviously, if you want to take out loans and stuff like that, then it is helpful, or a loan for a house as well, a mortgage and things. But I agree, it's probably something that it should be in the back of your mind, but way in the back of your mind. It doesn't have to be literally, front and center. I think you should really start to worry if you're taking out loads of different loans, loads of buy now, pay laters. And that's when your credit score is really going to, you'll find it really difficult then if you ever want to get onto the property ladder or take, do anything. That's when the lenders will go, this person doesn't pay back their loans. So why would we give them the money for a house? That's basically all it is.
Exactly that.
I think good advice is to have credit score dates. Yeah?
Credit
score dates, because it's good to check in.
No, you do.
You don't want to get the CCJs that you don't know about, and they're the kind of things that bring it down. But just checking on it, see how you're getting on, and then maybe make some improvements to help you kind of bring that up. Because that's something I started doing when I began to, look into buying a property. And then it became a little bit obsessive. They used to email me like, your credit scores has changed. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah,
has it gone down?
Because I get monthly reminders from Experian, and it shows me how mine's doing. To be honest, at the moment, I'm not even going to stress, because I think when I did my placement year, and that's when I got my first credit card, and I managed to get 999 out of 999, and I was like, okay, so what do I do now? Like you literally do not. Once you get that score, okay, cool. But I didn't need it for anything other than. No. Well, I already had a credit card, so I was like, okay, cool, I've done it. So yeah, I think a lot of people obsess over it and really stress, but like we've already said, like unless you're buying a property or you're really, really struggling with existing debt, buy now, pay later, loans, credit cards, that's when I probably would stress a bit more. But if you're just fresh out of uni, don't stress too much.
Yeah.
I think we just talked there about stress and anxiety around money, because I think it's isn't there like loads of studies to say that it's pretty much one of life's biggest stresses, and people really worry about it. Like, what would you say to like young people who are really like stressing and obsessing like over money, and like it's just something that they spend a lot of time worrying about, what, in terms of like practical and kind of probably mental health, like in kind of those kind of ways, what support and guidance would you kind of suggest to them?
That's a good question. I think especially with cost of living crisis, a lot of people are now suffering with anxiety and stress about their finances. I think if you can, having a good look at your finances to see what's causing the stress. So is it maybe you're not earning enough, maybe your expenses are too high? Is there anything you can control in that situation? I know we love to bury our head in the sand when it comes to money and things like that, but I think having a good look at your finances now to see where you're at and what's causing that anxiety, I think is really, really important. Now, in the past, I've suffered with like financial anxiety myself, so I know exactly what causes it, why I need to, like maybe my relationship with money needs adjusting, things like that. So I know what it's like to feel really anxious. So I feel like once you had a look at your finances, talking to people. I think talking to people right now as well. I think with the cost of living crisis, we're quite fortunate that everyone's feeling this pinch. So me talking to, let's say, Gaby and Felix today about how I'm stressed about finance, they might be like, oh my God, so am I. Like, I think having that open and honest conversation again, one, lightens the load, because you actually think what you thought was a huge issue might not actually be that big a deal. And also just gaining advice from other people can be really helpful. And if you're not confident with talking to other people, I think there's so many charities out there now that kind of help people, especially if you're maybe someone struggling with debt, you're not earning enough, they might give you impartial advice. And there's so many great organisations I definitely would recommend checking out too. But I think as well, final piece of advice, just remember you're not alone. This whole cost of living crisis, I don't think there's one person that hasn't felt a difference. They might not be struggling to say, but they have seen a difference, and we're all in that same boat at the moment, which I think we can kind of seek like solace in that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for the openness and the honesty as well. Our very own money experts sat here once upon a time struggled with financial anxiety.
Yeah, and I think, there's days where for some people it can come swinging roundabouts. Like there's days where I'm absolutely fine financially. Well, I think I'm fine with, anxiety. And then there's other days I'm like, oh my God. And there's a very slight change. So, if I feel it, other people can feel it too. So don't feel like you're abnormal for feeling a little bit stressed about money. I feel like everyone does stress from time to time about it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, just a question that's on my mind, because we were speaking about it in our last episode, and by the time this comes out, the listeners would have had a chance to listen to that. But we were speaking about money conversations, especially what kind of influences you've had along the way that have impacted your kind of idea or your relationship with money. Would you say there's anything in your life that has shaped your initial understanding of money or your relationship with money? For Gaby last week, it was with Dan in a relationship. For me, it was my family home. That was the kind of things that shaped our understanding of money.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I feel like I had like a huge family loss when I was younger. I think that fully shaped my relationship with money in terms of the frugality and the financial anxiety. And, that's definitely where a big cause of my relationship with money has been formed from. But that being said, like my mum's probably the most organised woman I've ever come across ever. And seeing how she kind of handles money like a boss. Yes. And I don't think anything can shake her when it comes to managing her finances, has definitely rubbed off on me. See a strong, independent woman, like just smashing it. So definitely seeing that radiate from my mum has given me the confidence to be able to do the same. I'm like, if my mum can do that and not be shaken by whatever she's gone through, then why can't I be the same? So yeah, definitely seeing how my mum manages money. And I think we're very open with money and like how the finances are run in the family. And I think, having that openness, 'cause I know not many families are open about like earnings and things like that in the household. So I'm quite fortunate that, if I know X amount that's been like coming in. I know how much the bills have gone up recently. Like, oh God, the energy bills are mad. So things like that. Like I'm very aware of what's going on at home. So I think that's definitely made me become more open with my finances as well.
Makes a lot of sense. You get it from your mum makes so much sense. I love that. We've chatted a lot about money on this episode, but we're going to dive into a little bit more about your 20s in particular. And we always like to ask our guests, and it can be money related or it can be anything to do with like, life in your 20s. But what's the biggest lesson that you've ever learned in your 20s that probably felt like a really big failure at the time, but you kind of needed to go through in order to experience and to grow, basically?
Yeah, so I probably wouldn't call it a failure, but I definitely think not being able to travel to Australia was probably like life's biggest lesson in the fact that I'm such a Virgo, I'm such an organizer, I'm such a planner. Like I'm the type of person that when I've got a plan, it has to happen because I've planned it, right? So when Australia couldn't happen, I honestly was just like knocked for six in the fact that I'm like, okay, so now what am I going to do with my life? Like I've just finished university, have no graduation, have no grad ball, I have no job because I wasn't planning to go for, have a job. I was meant to just live my life in Australia for however many months. And I think the biggest lesson from that is learning that you cannot plan everything. And also the fact that things also happen for a reason. So if I had gone to Australia and I did live my life for however many years doing whatever, all things money would never have been born. I would not be running my own business at the age of 25 years old. So I think that is probably the biggest thing I've learned, that you can't plan everything and not everything goes to plan, and have things happen for a reason.
So
definitely rejection being redirection. I think that's a great
the
example.
biggest one. Absolutely.
And as a recovering perfectionist, I can relate where I plan down to a T. If it doesn't go my way, I'm literally crumbling.
That's me. That's literally
so
me. I'm
bad.
like Virgo. If anyone had to embody a Virgo, that's me. So I don't love it. I don't love it.
So definitely relating to you on that one. And of course, no one's perfect.
Yeah.
We're all going through something, all trying to overcome something. Would you say that there's anything you are currently working on at the moment on improving, or maybe something that's holding you back but you're determined to overcome?
Good question. So for me, I'm really trying to work on my personal brand and work out what I want to be known as. Like I think I've grown All Things Money now for 2 years, which I'm absolutely loving. I love my business. I love my little platform. But I think I want to have All Things Money, and I also want to be known as Ola. Like, what is Ola? Ola, she's the finance queen, hopefully. But what else do I want to be known for? And I think just getting my name out as to what I want to be known as, like, be known for the personal finance person, the go-to money guru. I really want to work on that as being my personal brand. So that's definitely what I'm working on at the moment.
You're on the way, for sure.
Definitely
Thank you. I'm trying.
Well, thank you, Ola. It's been so amazing to have you in the studio. And I think for any young person right now who's potentially had some money worries, I think you've just squashed them, really, because I feel better from having this chat with you, knowing that, we're all probably about to go into some pretty crazy turbulent times with the recession, and to know that go at your own pace and figure it all out, and look at Ola's Instagram page and you'll get through, because it's a tough old time. But I think what's really interesting is kind of understanding people and their mindset in their 20s.
Yes.
And now that you're at 25 and you've hit the midpoint of your 20s, if you were to look back at Ola, 20-year-old Ola, is there some piece of wisdom or one piece of advice that you would give her that you think might really help her through her 20s and what she's going to experience?
Oh, that's a good question. Go with the flow. Like I said, I'm a planner, and I literally I think a lot of people can relate when I say this, like university maps out your life for the next 3 to 4 years. So you know what's happening the next year. So when you come out of uni, you're literally like, what happens now? Like some people go for a job, some people go traveling, like go with the flow and go for what's right with you. So I did university for 2 years, did a placement year, then came back, and obviously then had the pandemic. So I literally had no idea what I was going to do. Just went with the flow. I was like, applied for a couple of jobs, got a job, it worked out. Now I'm running my own business. Like, just go with the flow. Don't overthink too much. I think like we've said, like we've discussed this over lunch now, didn't we? Like everything happens for a reason. So if something doesn't go to plan, do not stress. I'm such a stress head when things don't go to plan. So yeah, just don't stress, go with the flow. And I know it's easier said than done when you're going through it, but now I can look back on it and be like, if 20-year-old Ola knew she'd be running her business at 25, she'd be like, what? Yeah. So yeah, definitely just chill. Yeah. Our 20s are for enjoying as well as, you know, setting up whatever career you want as well.
Yeah. I love that point about our 20s are all about enjoyment along the way.
Yeah, definitely. Life's way too short to be stressing over things we can't control. So yeah, definitely enjoy what you can enjoy.
A quick top tip for enjoying your 20s whilst also being money conscious. Do you have a quick tip?
Having a budget. Back to the budget. Okay.
You know me in my full circle moments. I love it.
In the fact that like anyone that knows me knows I love to have a good time. Like, I'm the first person that will say yes to a night out. I love a festival. I love like raves, all that stuff. But I do it within budget. Like again, people still call me the cheap friend, but I'm out every other weekend. So definitely just having a budget and knowing what you can and can't afford, and just tailor whatever you want to do to that budget. And I'm sure you'll have a good time in your 20s because I am. So you can do it too.
Well, good advice. So thank you so much, Ola. It's been amazing to have you in the studio. I love recording this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
A big thank you to you, yes you, for tuning into this episode of the Talk 20s podcast.
We hope it inspired you in some way and popped a little pep in your step for this week.
Make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. It means a lot to us to have your support.
We also love hearing your stories and suggestions. You can reach out to us on all socials by searching @Talk20s.
Lastly, before we go, our website, talk20s.com, is the hub for all things 20-somethings. Go check it out, my people.
Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.